Cameraman Jerry File.
Much of the material that we had to eliminate from the film in order to get it down to a length that a distributor would accept was a very sad loss, because there was a great deal of boys will be boys, the joy of discovering that they were alone on a tropical island and a good island, and that there were no restrictions and that they could play as they would. Much of this joy of experiencing that tropical island, I think, had to be eliminated in the film. There just simply wasn't time to play it out in its full length.
Director Peter Brook.
When the film opened in Paris, it was very hard for the French to accept that children are anything but innocent angels. You would think this curious for cynical people like the French, but French cynicism starts with the arousal of sex. In other words, in the Catholic-influenced French conception, you have these little darlings who belong to God until that devilish moment comes in puberty when sex appears. From then onwards, the French view is infinitely more cynical than the English or American view, because then they're prepared to believe the worst about anybody and are never surprised or disappointed when they learn that their politicians are involved in corrupt dealings or in sexual aberrations. That's never concerned them, because they expect the worst of every adult, unlike Americans and English, who have a secret dream that there are such things as pure adults and are continually disappointed. However, the English and the Americans recognize that children are complicated, strange little creatures from the moment they're born, and their hope is that through education that becomes better. The French, they say, believe that they're pure glasses of water when they come into the world, blank pages on which nothing is written. And so the French, when the film came out, were deeply shocked and felt that this was a slanderous distortion of the reality of childhood.
I'd like to think that Golding was wrong, that if a group of children, like the boys in Lord of the Flies, were put on a tropical island now in the conditions that they found themselves, that they wouldn't immediately regress, wouldn't become the savages that they did in the picture, that somehow we've evolved beyond that point. That's what I'd like to believe.
Cameraman Tom Holliman.
One idle moment when we were up in the Blasco offices casting all these little kids at Super 8, there was a zoom on this little funny amateur camera. And Peter started looking through it, and he was always curious, and he was saying, well, why can't we use a zoom on this thing? And what he didn't want was that zoomy look. So we started experimenting all the ways you could do a zoom where it didn't look like a zoom. We discovered if you walk at right angles to the subject and zoom at the same time, you get an arcing motion. In other words, if you walk from left to right and zoom at the same time, your camera will sort of move in. All you have to do is to break up the background behind a zoom, and it doesn't look zoomy anymore. We suddenly realized it was a fake tracking device that would suit our needs very much. So a lot of the film, almost the entire film, is shot with zoom.
This footage is only the second time still photographer Tom Holliman used a motion picture camera. It features Holliman's children rehearsing a scene from the film on a beach near their home in Puerto Rico. Holliman describes his first camera lesson from director Peter Brook in New York City.
Peter, I said, I don't know how to run a movie camera. He said, don't worry about it. We'll go rent one. We'll find somebody who knows how to run. They'll show you how. We rented an Aeroflex and a couple of rolls of film, and we found an assistant who just happened to be there, and we all jumped into a cab. I swear the assistant thought we were going off to a hotel to make dirty movies or something, and went up to Central Park. It was a drizzly day. Peter found a rock, and he said, all right. The assistant said, all right, here's how you hold this thing, Tom, and here's the button you press. And he said, here's the focus. And he said, you're going to see a little thing fluttering in there. Don't let it bother you. I looked through and had the revelation that, my God, this is like shooting through a single reflex camera Nikon. Just what I do all the time. Peter started climbing up the rock, and I panned him up and sat on the ground, and all of a sudden, I lost my balance, went over my feet in the air, and the camera back. I had on my best Chesterfield overcoat, the velvet collar, got muddy, and shook my head. This is absolute insanity. The assistant looked at us like we're absolutely off the rocker. We saw some kids in the park playing, and we grabbed them and shot a few things of them, and then One thing to another, it started to rain, and we knocked it off, and the assistant arranged to get the film developed. We saw the rushes the next day, and this is the most cockamamie thing I've ever gotten involved with. Peter sat and, no, it's perfectly fine, this and that, this and that. Now, here's what you do here. Now, see, you have to let go in order to make the cut. He started giving me a little lesson in film editing then. You have to let them exit the frame. Oh, I see. He said, now, get some more film and shoot some more.
Jerry File documented the arrival at midnight in Puerto Rico of the Lord of the Flies cast and crew. Producer, Lewis Allen.
We didn't know that whether any of the parents would let their kids come down and be in this film. It was the 3 months away on an island with these crazy filmmakers. But by the time it came around, there was great enthusiasm, and all the kids that we asked accepted. And what was interesting was that after the film, for the next year or two, we had letters from, I don't know how many of the parents, saying that it changed their children's lives. Almost invariably, they went straight to the top of their classes in school. They became leaders in their school. There was a certain independence of spirit that they had. They matured in some way, and it was kind of marvelous to get those letters. It was very touching to hear about kids who didn't seem extraordinary or marvelous or anything, but how their lives had been changed by this. Peter Brook operated, I would say, Machiavellian about how to get the thing out of the kids, and he would try to work things through intellectually a lot. He's not a person of spontaneity. And when he works through things, he works them through thoroughly, and they can be brilliant. But sometimes one feels that a certain amount of instant decisions, spontaneity, would perhaps contribute something more.
Cameraman Tom Holliman and director Peter Brook developed an elaborate track system to move the camera on the beach and in the jungle.
And so we discussed various ways of tracking it, maybe with a gas-filled balloon. No, it'd be easily punctured. How about a clothesline? The pulley on it? Well, a little cumbersome. Then finally came up with the idea of tripods, which would adjust to any terrain, could be set up quickly. So I got some of my old still photography tripods out I had, and then we had to invent a track. So what it boiled down to our tracking system on this, I did all the pushing myself. We had no stick on the camera even. I held the area by grabbing the battery case, which was vertical, and my finger on the button, and literally moved this thing on a little dolly on top of a track, maybe 12 to 16 inches in width. It was a rail and little nylon wheels fitted on top of it. It took quite a while to come up with this thing. I tried many versions of it. We then had a thing called the gate, which attached the end of the trolley, and you could come off the railroad track, so to speak, and switch off onto the gate, which is on a big steel pedestal and swung around an arc. Some of the shots are made that way.
Cameraman Jerry File.
You'll notice at the end of the film there are 2 credits, one thanking Mitch Bogdanovich and the other thanking Nagra Kudelski. Lord of the Flies was, I believe, the first picture ever shot using a zoom lens. Mitch redesigned and rebuilt the lenses that we got, and Kudelski supplied the Nagra Kudelski tape recorder, a machine the size of a large book that ran on flashlight batteries. Because the insurance companies were very, very skeptical that something that operated on flashlight batteries could actually be used to record a serious film, we had to take for a while a large mains-operated Ampex 350 that comes in 2 footlocker-sized cases that has to be carried by more than one person. And of course we abandoned that machine immediately.
The Movie Log. Here begins a series of articles concerning the actual filming of Lord of the Flies. The stories have been written daily by actual participants in the shooting, and give immediate impression of the arts of filmmaking from the actor's standpoint. The above documentary sketch by our staff artist James Aubrey shows one of the many mysterious gatherings of old Ironsides and superjets which have puzzled the company on location for the past week. Just what they are doing remains a mystery as this edition goes to press. Cameraman Tom Holliman must find it difficult to make sweeping panorama shots of the sea surrounding an uninhabited island. Jim Sheldon. Big Jim Sheldon is the head grip for Lord of the Flies, but he has been many different things to many different people through his colorful life. Born 41 years ago, Big Jim decided to travel at the age 16 and start his career as a world traveler by joining with a merchant steamer. Since then, Big Jim has tended a bar naked in Nairobi, the heat was pretty hot, been stranded 6 months by ice in Vladivostok, imported wares in Hong Kong and Macau, and helped run a blockade of oil through the Gulf of Aqaba during the Arab-Israeli conflict 4 years ago. Big Jim has worked in about 10 movies as head grip. One of his most recent movies was called Cyclops Island. Jim had to design a gorilla cage for it, among other things. The movie log, Wednesday's movie. In the morning we did some shots of the war dance. We had to run around chanting. We had to do that for 6 turns around, and then we had to go in and out 4 times still chanting. Then we had to run around going faster and faster, still chanting. We did it in about 6 takes, and that ended the morning. In the afternoon we did some shots of the third assembly. Then Kent Fletcher was crying. Anthony Judson had to quiet him. Mr. Hollyman also fell over backwards while filming. Getting killed. Editor's note. Piggy must get killed during the film, and his account of how one is killed cinematically follows. Hugh Edward plays Piggy in the film, and found Piggy's film, Death, to be just another part of show business. First, Mr. Hollyman got his camera very close to me. Then he asked Mr. Brooke to hold up a stone and push it in front of the lens while I fell into Dave Corda's lap, and Mr. Brooke knocked the conch out of my hand with a stone and broke it on the ground. While this was going on, Mr. Hollyman panned down with the conch. Note, Roger did not push the boulder down on me. Hugh Edwards. Some notes on Something Queer in the Warehouse. Something Queer in the Warehouse is the film which is going to be made by the Camp Boys. We have been talking about it for a month, but this week it's really beginning. We have ordered a tape recorder, tripods, and everything you can possibly think in making the film. About the only thing we haven't ordered is a camera truck. The cast is mainly 4 people, an inspector, counterfeiter, messenger, and a murderer. The movie keeps you at the edge of your chair, and if you look in Time magazine of July 14th, you will see something about it. Time got a few facts wrong about us, but got the title of the movie right. We have a long script done for the movie. Weekly newspaper, written, edited, and published by the cast of Lord of the Flies. Weather this week, quite warm with frequent showers. Published at Frenchman's House, Vieques.
Although essentially an American film, Lord of the Flies was screened at the Cannes Film Festival in 1963 as a British entry. Tom Hollyman.
When the film was in the Cannes Festival, the 2 stars came down. Betty Davis was head of the jury that year, and I'll never forget the kids. It was such a moment when they were up in the balcony, and at the end of the film, you know, they have a tradition, I don't know if they still do it or not, where 2 spotlights are trained on the stars up in the balcony, and Ralph and Piggy stood up, and the whole audience stood up and gave them a big ovation. Then they came down the red carpet steps, carpeted, you know, with all the trumpery and all that stuff, you know, and the glitz. And Betty Davis came over and congratulated them. And then they had a press conference. I'll never forget that. Peter's sitting in the center and Piggy and Ralph there and all the press there, the national press and interpreter behind them. They answer these questions, feel them very worldly matter, you know. And finally, Ralph sort of looks at the watch. So I'm sorry, I guess we'll have to conclude this now. We're going for a bit of booze up on Sam Spiegel's yacht.
Lewis Allen.
I think Sam liked the finished film quite a lot. In fact, he threw a big party on his yacht and had us all coming as kind of guests of honor. He had everybody of any consequence at the festival on the boat. Hitchcock was there, and of course the kids hung around with Hitch, who was terribly nice to them, and they were thrilled, and all the various stars and starlets were there. Sam was finally won over by the picture.
At the Cannes Festival, this film was the British entry, along with The Sporting Life, the other British entry, and Golding came down, and I sort of unofficially was asked if I could do whatever I could to make Golding feel comfortable in the situation. Golding had not gotten an immense amount of money for the film rights on the thing. I think he got more than $2,000. When Golding saw the film at the Cannes Festival, this point came up, as did the Birthmark Kid. I had the sense of memory that he didn't feel the loss of the Birthmark Kid was any great loss. And I think he liked our interpretation of Simon as a much simpler thing than in the book.
Producer, Lewis Allen.
Well, we opened in New York. The Walter Reed Continental Distributing handled it. There were a lot of celebrities. I remember Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, a number of people. It was a big opening. Bosley Crowther gave us a very poor review in the New York Times the next day. And there were lines around the block. I mean, literally, on and on around the block with everybody. The anticipation of the movie was enormous, and it did extremely well.
The great problem of the theatre as a form today is that it speaks so little to people. There are plays that have success, but the form itself can hardly be said to be one that speaks deeply to people in large quantities all over the world.
One touches the question of what deliberate acting stems from. Everybody's way of walking, for instance, is deeply drenched with his personality. And one has a real choice. Is one going to develop those mannerisms, or is one trying to start from the point where everything, fingertips, toes, stomach, hips, drop one set of habits and pick up whatever the moment demands? Is it possible to find that without all the structures that come from memory, ideas, wish to portray? Is it possible, first of all, before going into any of those areas, just to go quite directly into it? Raise this as a great question. There are many connected with it, and I'm sure that everyone here has got many personal observations and experiences that we can share, but I think later in the day, when we've done a little more work together, it'll be more fruitful for all of us, particularly as it's lunchtime now.